Hi there, this is Karen with Mini Math Lessons, and today's lesson is on measures of central tendency, what they are, and how to calculate them. So again, I've shared the free activity link in the description of the video, but once you get it, you simply paste it into your browser and the activity will come up. It's on Classpad.net. You do not have to have an account, but if you do want to save the activity, to modify it or change it some way, make sure you create a free account on Classpad.net, and then you once you do that, you can duplicate it and change it as you want. So this activity is really just about kind of giving some context to what measures of central tendency are and how we use them and how we find them. So it's very text heavy, so think of this as a language arts and a math lesson at the same time. So at the very beginning, I give some examples of things they may have heard from the news. You could bring up your own that may be more relevant to the student you're working with. And then we talk about the measures we're going to be exploring: mean, median, mode, range. So again, kind of definitions, and then we're going to use some real data to explain how to find them, and then talk about what that data tells us about the context, right? So I give some suggestions because things are much more interesting for kids, for anyone really, if they go explore their own data, something they're interested in. So we're all kind of quarantined right now due to the corona, so this is just some suggestions. Get them outside or get them walking around your house. So what are things that you could count within your own house? So how many books are on a shelf, so count books on different shelves in the house, and then see if there's an average or a median or a mode type of thing. You could go up and down your neighborhood and count the number of trees in the front yard, or you could go in your house and count the number of pairs of shoes that are in each person's closet. Is it the same? Is it more? Those types of things. So I give some suggestions. Obviously, they can come up with their own. So whatever they decide to do, have them collect their own data. And then as you scroll down, we're basically going to go through each of the four measures using example data. So I went out and counted the number of chairs on everyone's porch on my street. Or not everyone, 20 houses on my street. My street is a very condensed street. Everyone has a porch, so I went and counted chairs there to see if there was a typical number of chairs, an average number of chairs, whatever measure. So here's the data. If they don't want to collect their own, there is sample data right here, and they're using the sample data to kind of explain things. It is more fun if they get their own data, and they can put their own data in column A, column C, if they want to do more than one. So then what I do is I talk about what each measure is, what it represents, and then I use my sample data to find this, show them how it's found, and then they're then going to try to do the same thing with their own data. So for the range, they're going to find the highest and the lowest number in their data and subtract them. Here's the example with the chair data. This is the calculator, and they can calculate if they can't do their own in their head, and then they write down their number for their data there. So same thing with the mode. I talk about what the mode is, and then I give some examples using the chair data. So I show them that the mode is the data value or values that occurs the most. And so I show them that in mine, I have several that occur more than once, but I have one that occurs more than the others. So that becomes my mode. And they may have one or none or a couple that occur more than once. So we talk about that, and then they go find the mode on their own after they see my example. Same thing with median. So I talk about how median is the exact middle data point, and so they need to arrange their data in order, least to greatest, greatest to least. So I show with the chair data how to do that, and then I talk about how the exact middle is half and half, and I happen to have my middle is the same number, so that becomes my median of 3. But I do talk about if it's an odd number, there's one single number in the middle. If it's two different numbers in the middle for even number of data, they have to find the halfway point, that type of thing. So then they go and try it with their own data. And finally, we have our mean, or the average, which is the calculated middle. And so I talk about how you have to sum up all your data, you get a total, and then you have to divide by how many data points you had. So in my example, I had 20. So again, I'm showing them how to do it with the chair data, and then they go try it with their own data, and they can use the calculator if they want. My suggestion when they're collecting data is to make sure they're collecting at least 5 data points. probably don't want to do 20. I did 20 in mine, but somewhere between 5 and 10 is a good number for them to practice and work with. So once they've found all 4 of them, then we list them out. So here's the chair data that we found, and then they're going to list their data, and then we talk about, well, how do you know which value is going to be the best representation of the data? And again, this is where you come in. It really depends on your reasoning. So for me, if the question is, what's the typical number of chairs on a porch in my neighborhood, I went with the mode, the one that occurred the most, for a couple reasons. I talked about the mean being this 2.9, which I would have rounded up because it doesn't make sense in the context of chairs, that 0.9 of a chair. And I also talked about 3 occurred more, and I could have chosen that as a representation. But I know, based on my neighborhood, that most people have an even number of chairs, whether it's 2 or 4. They tend to have an even number. So I went with 4 because to me it made more sense. And they're so close that in my range is so small, maybe it doesn't make a huge difference whether I said 3 or 4. And that's what we're talking about, is how my reasoning is how I decide which one I'm going to use. And so then they can think about, okay, so we have our 4 numbers, which one's going to make the most sense for our situation, the data that we collected. So this is just a fun activity. Go out and explore data. Think about ways that you can describe the data once you found out which one makes the best representation. And then we're going to go into some other activities where we're going to explore a little bit more about these measures once they understand what they are and how to find them.